Unit 7. Cultures. Track 44.
Can you give us some examples of culture shock that people have experienced?
There are many examples of culture shock, and many of those really come about because people haven't prepared themselves well enough. Some examples of that might be timing, where in some cultures the concept and perception of timekeeping is very different, and I guess the obvious one that people always use is the example of the Middle East. The Middle Eastern clock really revolves around two things, really: the prayer times, and of course, because they were desert travellers, about the movements of the sun and the moon during periods of the day. Other examples is where, again around time, where perhaps from a Latin culture's perspective, it's about building relationships before you actually get down to business. Now, very often Western and particularly American business people find that very frustrating. For Americans, time is money, and so they'll be very keen to actually, the salesman will be very keen to get out his sales literature and start exalting the virtues of the product he's trying to sell you. They'll try to get on with the agenda as quickly as possible. Whereas, particularly in Latin cultures and also in people like Chinese cultures, relationship building is very important. They'll want to entertain you for sure, and very often invite you back to their home. And all this before they actually want to sit down and do business with you, because in the Latin culture, they are making judgments about you as an individual as to whether you're the kind of person that they want to do business with.
Unit 7. Cultures. Track 45.
Are some people better suited for international business than others?
Absolutely. What companies still tend to do is select people for international business and business assignments purely based on their skill set. So if you're the best civil engineer or you're the greatest IT consultant in the business, it is often thought that this fully equips you to be the best person to conduct that business internationally. Clearly those skills are very important, but they have to be underpinned by, I think, a number of personal traits that make you a more effective international business person. Some of those traits, adaptability. You have got to be prepared to adapt the way that you do business, or adapt your expectations or your needs to meet the needs of the culture of the people that you're doing business with. So adaptability, flexibility is obviously very important. You've got to be prepared to actually change the parameters with which you are intending to do business.
Unit 7. Cultures. Track 46.
Very important, and you'll know from this course in communication, you've got to be a good listener. You've got to pay more attention than you would when speaking to somebody in your own culture to make sure that you have understood quite clearly what is being said. And one of the things that we always say to people is that to be very sure that you've actually heard what you think you've heard, there are some steps you can take. It's always a very good idea to get the individual, if you're not clear, to repeat what they've said. It may seem tedious to you, but actually it's very important to make sure that you haven't made mistakes. I think also one of the key features of the successful international business person is to be non-judgmental. For instance, if you're coming from an Asian culture to try and do business with a Western culture, for certain the way that the people do things will be fundamentally different. The hierarchy, the structure, the decision-making process, the seniority and the influence of the people you're doing business with will be fundamentally different. You may not agree, you may not approve of the way that business is done in another culture, but the way that people do business in that culture is as a result of many years of development. And so you have to be accepting that it may be not to your liking and it may be different, but it is not wrong.